Afternoon, everybody, and thank you for choosing to spend part of the afternoon with me. I'm really excited about this session, and I hope you get some practical ideas about reading fluency while you're here with me. So my name is Stephane Bolton, and I've been teaching for over 22 years. Most of that time has been in first grade with a year or two in other positions. I'm a national board certified teacher. I'm also certified as an EBLI instructor, and I was a Goyan Literacy Fellow last year. So you may have seen some of my videos shared on the Science of Reading Classroom Substack. So today my goal is for you to leave with a framework for advancing reading fluency in your classroom, regardless of what grade you teach. And in this framework, we're going to talk about how to check the roots, which means applying a student's strengths and opportunities for improvement. And then we're going to talk about how we can use oral reading data, including miscues and reading behaviors, to shape our next moves. And we'll talk about those instructional moves that can support each reader. And then we'll focus on fluent readers with 3 evidence-based strategies. And my plan is to spend most of our time at that portion of the presentation. So we're going to accomplish all of this in 4 parts, moving relatively quickly through the first 3 and landing in our instructional moves near the end. So let's start by looking at the research roots of reading fluency. So first, we need a concise definition of what we're talking about when we say reading fluency. Many people hear reading fluency and they immediately think of ORF, or oral reading fluency measures, calculating how many words correct a student can read per minute. And pace is definitely part of fluency, but it is really so much more than that. So take a moment and read over this definition. So reading fluency is accurate and automatic reading with phrasing, expression, and pacing that support meaning, which is always the ultimate goal of reading. And there are many smaller skills that can be tucked inside each of these terms, like intonation and tone and chunking and knowing when to pause. But the big idea is this: fluent readers read accurately at an appropriate pace with expression that helps the text make sense. That's really what we're talking about when we say reading fluency. So why is reading fluency so important? Well, it really comes back to that cognitive science piece. Students who are not yet fluent are juggling many foundational skills all at once. They're connecting phonemes to graphemes, holding those sounds in the correct order so that they can then blend them, say the word, and then check to see, is that even really a word? And does it make sense? And when so much attention is placed on just reading the word, there is very little working memory left over for remembering the sentence, much less connecting ideas or building any kind of meaning. The system is just overloaded, and we can't reach that ultimate goal of comprehension in that situation. On the other hand, when reading is fluent and readers can pull words from their long-term memory with ease, those words flow into working memory without overtaxing the system. And that allows students to focus on what the words actually mean and how they fit together to sound like speech. In other words, it frees up that working memory for comprehension, understanding. So really, fluency matters because of that bottleneck working memory creates for each and every one of us. We only have so much working memory available, and if decoding takes up all of that space, comprehension obviously suffers. And accuracy and automaticity take time and lots of practice to build, but they are the necessary prerequisites to help students read fluently. So based on our cognitive architecture, students need to become accurate and automatic with word recognition in order to reach the goal of fluency. And that's where I'm pulling my analogy together here now. That's the root system of the tree. Without strong, healthy roots, the rest of the tree is going to struggle and it won't be healthy. Fluency is like the trunk of the tree, or you could even consider it like the bridge connecting word recognition to comprehension. So basically, fluency is what helps readers cross from simply getting the words off the page to actually making meaning from those words. And finally, comprehension is the fruit. That's the ultimate goal: understanding, making meaning. It's where readers can digest ideas and use them to build a stronger knowledge base for their future learning. But without those roots, the trunk, that fruit obviously cannot grow. Everything you'll hear me say today is grounded in research and evidence. And we know these things to be true, that fluency is definitely more than speed. Fluency reflects the coordination of so many different sub-skills that our readers must develop. And because it's a coordination of all of these sub-skills, a simple oral reading fluency measure actually can give us a lot of insight into how word recognition and language and comprehension are all working together as our readers progress. And research also shows us the importance of repeated reading, but to maximize that, we need to be able to provide support and feedback in the moment to help students gain proficiency. So before we go into strategies, I wanted to share just a very quick version of my own classroom journey. 2 years ago, so I'd been teaching 20 years, I did linguistic phonics, and it was really quite by accident at an online summit very similar to this. And I, after that summit, was so intrigued by what I had heard that I signed up for evidence-based literacy instruction, or EBLI. And that changed the way I thought about instruction. It changed the things I looked for in my students, and it fundamentally has changed me as an educator. So before we look at this first graph, I just want to be very clear that these different years represent different cohorts of students. It's just a classroom trend data point. It by no means is a controlled research study. But as classroom teachers, we all know that this is really the kind of action research that helps us refine our practice. This is what we have to work with. The pattern that matters here is that after the shift I made to speech to print instruction with EBLI, my students' end of year words correct per minute increased, and the accuracy also got stronger. But more importantly than even the data is that my students' love of reading and writing grew. And the neat thing about motivation is that when we get better at something, that improvement works as just a natural reinforcer, a natural motivator. Before EBLI, I had spent like a lot of time and a lot of money on lots of very cute things that I thought would make learning more fun for my students. I remember the Pop-It craze, and I got all the Pop-Its so we could pop the sounds in the words. And I got a whole collection of different heart accessories, heart stickers, heart beads, so we could mark the tricky parts in our high frequency words. And I loved that kind of stuff. And I thought that was what made learning enjoyable for my students. But during my first year using EBLI, I honestly never took out one of those items. I had a whole drawer set of stuff that I didn't touch that whole year. And the cool thing was that we accomplished better results, and my students were more engaged. They were more motivated than they had ever been. And all I used was whiteboards, markers, and text. And that was a really powerful moment for me to realize I didn't need all that extra stuff, that learning was enough. This slide compares the 3 readers in each of those 5 years who had the highest oral reading fluency scores. So take a moment to just look across the years and see what you notice. You can see I marked the shift to linguistic phonics with EBLI, and the scores of even the 3rd highest reader in my last 2 years have been higher than the highest readers had been in previous years, and their accuracy was remaining strong. But we all know that we need to be concerned not just about those students who are basically come into first grade reading, but we have a lot of students learning to read. So let's take a look at the other end of that spectrum, the students who are reading the fewest words per minute. These are the 3 scores that were the lowest from the past 5 years. And you can see that over the past 2 years, the students who the fewest number of words correct per minute were 46 words and 37 words, still with strong accuracy. So the slowest readers from my past 2 years were significantly stronger than any of the slowest 3 readers had been in the previous 3 years. And their accuracy was stronger too. And also notice that the second and third slowest readers over the past 2 years were actually relatively strong readers. Their data showed that they were reading between 55 and 68 words correct per minute with strong accuracy. Again, it's not a controlled research study, but the classroom data definitely supports that these instructional shifts were making a positive impact on student learning. So something significant was changing to get these consistent results over the past 2 years. And I kind of, especially that first year, I thought I had found the miracle grow for building strong readers. So I wanted to share with today some of the things that have made that difference. Obviously, the data and the numbers give us information, but the story certainly does not stop there. In fact, that's really just the beginning because our goal is never to produce fast readers. Our goal is to produce fluent readers who can read with ease and little effort so they can give more attention to meaning and understanding. And to move students toward that goal, I use an assessment cycle that keeps me grounded in their miscues and their reading behaviors. So let's take a quick look at that assessment cycle. Each week, I have my students read for me for a reading checkpoint. And I often do have help from either a resource teacher or a reading coach. And we just alternate which students we listen to each week so that I can still be sure I'm listening to every child at least every other week. The top part of the reading checkpoint is focused on word reading. This is untimed, but I make notes about whether the students are reading the words automatically, if they're pausing, if they're needing to audibly sound the words out before blending them. And that helps me get a gauge on their automaticity. On the list, on the top 3 rows, I include words that have our current sound or spelling that we've been focused on. And then the 4th row, I'm intentional about pulling words with previously learned skills. And the bottom row, I try to make sure those are high utility words, whether they're high frequency words or words that I know we're encountering in directions that have some of the patterns we've been studying. And then students read a short passage. And this passage is not strictly decodable, but I do make sure it has a lot of the words with our current and previously taught skills. I time students, but they read the entire passage and I mark where they are at the 1 minute point. But I also mark how long it took them to read the entire passage. And the timing part of this is very discreet. I usually use my phone as my timer and I have it set where there's no signal when the timer goes off. So they know that it's happening, but it's not a big deal. I record observations also during this process about their pacing, their expression, whether they're self-correcting, do they seem to be reading for meaning? In other words, if they say something that doesn't make sense, do they pause? And I have a little check sheet that I developed so that I could truly be diagnostic and prescriptive. And a lot of those common observations I would want to write down, I could simply check them off on this list and make a few notes. And a version of this is on the Padlet also for you. So the assessment cycle was basically we would do a reading checkpoint each week. I would look at the miscues and patterns. I would use that to choose my next instructional move, whether it was whole class or whether it was a certain group of students. I would teach, I would respond in the moment to what was happening, but then I would also, end up at that reading checkpoint again. And that just helped me really grounded and focused on each and every student and how they were growing. And it does take some time. And it is worth that time to me because I use the results to plan my instruction. So it's only really helpful if you're going to use those results to be responsive to your students' needs. So every week after that checkpoint, I'm asking myself, what type of instruction does this reader need next? I'm going to fly through the next few slides a little quicker so we have plenty of time for our strategies. But basically, based on the results, I have 4 different profiles for striving readers based on their accuracy and automaticity. And I'm going to go into more detail on these profiles on a coming. Of course, our goal is we want all of our students to be flourishing readers where they're accurate and they're automatic, they're focused on meaning, they're fluent. But in order to get every student there, we have to focus on their miscues to plan our next moves. So for our developing decoders, they have low accuracy and low automaticity. Their reading feels very effortful, and they still have frequent mistakes. They really need additional word work and they need a lot of support and application of reading and connected text. Then for our step-by-step decoders who have higher accuracy, but they're still very slow, they just need more opportunities for reading and rereading text with feedback. And they need to gain some confidence that they are reading the words correctly and they don't have to sound out every word if they can retrieve it. We all know our guess and go readers. Their automaticity is pretty high, but their accuracy is not strong. They need immediate feedback focused on accuracy and meaning. And sometimes that will reveal that underneath that guessing, they're actually a developing decoder or a step-by-step decoder. And sometimes they've just developed a bad habit of not attending carefully to the words. And then if we have students who are strong in accuracy and automaticity, but they're still not getting to that level of comprehension, those are words to meaning readers, and they need work on fluency specifically. So I'm going to bridge over from each of these three areas, and one of my strategies goes with each one on the instructional moves. So my first strategy is just reading for accuracy, and it deals with the roots. These slides, of course, you have all of the slides, but these in particular are also on the Padlet. So I'm going to scoot on through that to get to actually explaining it. If we look at this image of a teacher and a student, what does it make you think of in terms of reading instruction? Who looks happy here? Pretty much they both do. The teacher and the student, they both look pretty pleased. This is going smoothly. Everybody feels like they're getting to the destination without very many setbacks. But who is really doing the work is the teacher. So this to me is comparable to when we give students a text and before they've had an opportunity to read that text themselves, we're already rescuing them from that struggle. We're modeling it for them, or we're echo reading it with them. And it feels good because we're providing support and we know they need that support. And the student feels good because they can feel more successful. But have we actually helped that student become more independent and learn as much as they could? Probably not, because when we do that hard work for students, we're not maximizing the opportunity for them to develop those skills. They need to do the decoding work themselves. And for many students, especially in the beginning, that's going to be difficult. Learning is not always easy, it's not always pleasant. Sometimes it's hard. Like you can see in the image on that second picture, the student's not as happy. Sometimes it feels like it would be easier to just put them in the boat and get them over there to make the work feel less effortful. But if we hold back just enough and have the student do the decoding work while we are right there with that just-in-time feedback and support, we're actually doing the hard job of building readers through that process. And in time, it's more enjoyable for the students because they see themselves improving. There again, the motivation becomes natural because they know their hard work is paying off. So when students are reading, we should have them decode each and every word and provide the minimum amount of support needed. That might mean giving a single sound within a word, or it could be as simple as tapping your pencil above a word that a student misread. And then after that first read is complete, then you can go back and model the fluent reading and have the student read it again. But the key piece of building accuracy, that first building block of fluency, is that students need to do the decoding work with that feedback and support to help them grow. Nothing else can replace that experience. Here's a short video clip of what this can look like. And I have some teaching moves that you can look for while you're watching the clip.
People use...
Okay, say the sounds. Say and this will say k. We'll put that together.
Technology to change the land. What was once a forest or grassland could become a big farm. The wheat field in the picture was made by people. They planted the seeds and changed D.
You got those first two sounds. What is that?
D.
Say E.
D. A.
Say I.
Die.
So we put it with D.
Decided.
I'm going to go ahead and stop that one there so you could get the point of giving the minimum amount of support needed. And that student grew into a beautiful reader. You can hear the process is not always easy. It's not, it takes effort, but that's the kind of hard work that's going to build our strong readers. So I would love to give you time to jot down key takeaways, but I'm going to keep moving. Again, in the slides, I put in some strategies from the writing revolution to help you reflect on the information a little more. I find these strategies great for students and myself as I'm processing information, so feel free to do that also. Moving on to strategy 2. So we're going to move up to the bridge, fluency. We are going to talk about a fluency rubric, which can be used with all readers, but it's especially useful once students are reading accurately. A fluency rubric uses student-friendly language to make the skills of fluent reading more concrete. And I would introduce this to my whole class so that all students can have that shared language that they can use anytime they're reading. The rubric is very powerful because students need to understand what fluent reading sounds like before they can improve it. And it provides the language they can use when discussing fluency. So a fluency rubric really acts in two ways. It's both a mirror and a map. So it's a mirror because students can reflect on their current reading performance, but it's also a map because it shows students a path to how they can keep growing. So it really serves both purposes, having clear criteria that they can notice and then use that to improve the features of fluent reading. So when I introduced the fluency rubric to my first graders, I started with simple definitions of just 3 key terms: accuracy, pace, and expression. And then we discussed what each component would look like if a reader needed more practice, if they were getting there, or if they were already fluent in that skill. And then I became the student and they were my teachers, and I would display a short passage and I would read it. In my mind, I would have a category in mind for what I was going for, and they would respond and tell me where my reading fit on the rubric and share their reasoning for that. And then with time and practice, they are able to coach one another on their fluency using the rubric and provide each other with strengths and opportunities for improvement. So the process of teaching the fluency rubric is time well spent because students develop a deeper understanding of fluency and learn about their own reading while they're also learning how to give respectful feedback. Here is a video about my introduction of the fluency rubric and then some footage of students using the rubric with one another.
So we're starting with accuracy. What are we starting with? Accuracy. We say the right words. What does accuracy mean? Say the right words. Okay, so here are the different categories for accuracy. It would be read or needs practice when you are thinking about accuracy if I missed a lot of words. Okay, if I'm missing a lot of words, I'm not very accurate. Or if I'm guessing a lot of words, I am not accurate. Good readers don't guess. I've got a little story up here. You are going to be the teachers. I am the reader. I'm the student. I'm going to read it, and I'm not always going to do my best reading. I'm going to read with different categories in mind. And you as the teacher have to decide what rating you would give me based on my accuracy. The man was big on Halloween nightly. Kids running up and down the street laughs and shouty trick or treat. What did you hear that let you know that I need practice on my accuracy? How did you know that? Banks. And that seems like it was just a guess. I saw the first letter and I was like, and I saw the last letter and I was like, hey, I'm just going to say man there and keep going.
Ran, you said run.
So that's not accurate.
The air feels cold and the sky is dark, do we feel afraid? No! Wait! You're out. Wait. Yeah. You're our candy and look for our best treats. What a fun Halloween night. Okay. So what's my accuracy? I think you're reading. You got a little stuck on word, but you sound them out. Oh no, that's not. Wait, yeah, that's my accuracy. You did a great job because when you got stuck on a word, you sounded it out.
You tell her one thing. You can use one of these sentence starters if you want to. Tell her one thing she does really good when she's reading.
I told her that she did a great job of it, and it almost auto was
That's good. That's accuracy. High five on accuracy. All right. And what's a grow that you have for her that would help her get even better?
I said it sounded super good, but maybe read a bit smoother, and put a bit shorter the spaces between each word.
Sounds like that would help, doesn't it? That was great feedback, Everett.
All right. So the fluency rubric came up time and time again throughout the year because they understood it at a deep level. You could also introduce accuracy one week, work on that, and then gradually build it at the beginning of the year. So as you reflect back on the fluency rubric later, you might want to expand the kernel sentence. A fluency rubric helps by adding the information about who it helps, when it helps, and how it helps. Let's move on to our final strategy, Reader's Theater. Reader's Theater, it gets us to that good, delicious fruit of the tree, and it really incorporates all of the three strategies. So students rehearse or reread a text, and I'm sure most of us have used Reader's Theater before. It gives students a purpose for reading, and it gives them a natural reason to want to improve. We're also always short on time as teachers, and a Reader's Theater provides a natural way to integrate instruction because we are addressing accuracy, automaticity, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, content knowledge, and motivation in this one instructional move, especially when you use it very intentionally. So at first, we focus on accuracy. We're back to strategy one. Students read first for accuracy and understanding. Some students may be able to do that part independently. Others may need that support that we talked about in our first strategy. And then students practice reading their lines and they reread with different students and they can refine the fluency using feedback. And that fluency rubric can come in handy for that process. And the ultimate goal is that they're performing the Reader's Theater script for an audience to showcase fluent reading. So I have a video clip here to show you, and you will notice that I have three scripts of Red Riding Hood that were all slightly different but had the same basic cast. So you'll notice different configurations of how students practice with one another during that process.
That's how the wolf, the grandfather, the hunter, and Little Red Riding Hood became unlikely friends in the forest. Give me a glow and a go. It was good when you found out which verse which scene you were on and where. You could practice on making it not as choppy. Okay. From that day on, Little Red stayed on the path and never forgot the lesson he had learned in the forest. Okay, we're going to give you a glow and a grow. So I think my glow, she's going to give the grow. Yes. I think my glow is I'm glad, like, when you messed up on words, I'm glad how you corrected yourself in them. I caught some of that. Yeah, you did. Okay, your turn. My glow is, I think, when you read like if that's funny, I don't think you should stop and just laugh. I think you should go on and just laugh. Okay, but we grandfather, what big eyes you have! What big ears you have! And what sharp teeth you have! Right? No, we need to help Harry when she says the hat. She needs to say the end with expression. She's just saying hat. Because I have to laugh with it because it says laughing, but I don't know how to laugh and sing. I can tell you an example. It says laughing. Grandfather, the wolf's wearing your hat. Yeah, like that. So the wolf trotted to grandfather's cabin to explain. Who's there? It's me, the forest hope.
The time we've been waiting for. Showtime. All right.
I wasn't trying to eat anyone. All I wanted was a quiet nap and maybe a snack. Little Red, take this basket to grandfather and stay on the path. There she goes, Little Red Riding Hood, whistling, stomping, and waking up every bird in my forest. Hey there, kid. Where are you headed making all that noise? To grandfather. He's sick, so I'm bringing soup and bread. Who's there? It's me, the forest helper. May I come in and talk? But grandfather thought he said forest hunter. He dashed into the closet and slammed the door. Wait, come back. I'm not dangerous. Grandfather, what big eyes you have! The better to see your sweet face with, my child. What big ears you have! The better to hear your kind voice with. And what sharp teeth you have! The better to chew my soup with. All I wanted was a quiet nap and maybe a snack. I think the accuracy, I agree with Larry because they said almost all of the words right. And I think with the pace they were getting there because they are going a little bit too fast.
So you can see the variety of the different types of rehearsals and how the accuracy and the feedback were all tied together in that. So basically, when students read accurately and they use a fluency rubric, Reader's Theater gives them a meaningful purpose to reread with expression, phrasing, and understanding. So time has flown by. We're going to bring it all together real quick because we have covered a lot. We should focus on fluency because it is the bridge to comprehension, our ultimate goal. We can develop fluency in students by being very intentional with our assessments. A simple reading checkpoint can give you so much powerful information to let you know the next best move for each student. But the real takeaway is that we can make fluency work more intentional without making it more complicated. All of the strategies I've showed you today are all relatively simple, but they're very powerful because it's really all about our students and helping them reach their full potential. So I had to close with one quote from a student. She was asked, what is something you can do now that you could not do at the beginning of first grade? And this was like the last week of school.
Well, I kind of didn't really know how to read with fluency, but now I know how to read with fluency.
What does it mean to read with fluency?
Well, it means like you read smoothly and you don't really guess any words and like you don't sound like a robot when you're doing the words.
So she did that interview with a graduate assistant at my school, and I didn't watch it until later, and I thought that was just cool that that's what she said. So the three strategies we've talked about are reading for accuracy, the fluency rubric, and Reader's Theater. And I had to bring my analogy to fruition here, but you can look at all the connections at a later time. The main thing I want to say here is that if we give too little support to our students, they're going to be struggling. But if we give too much support, we keep them at a level of dependence and we don't allow them to grow at the rate that they're capable of. It's all about the right support at the right time to maximize their growth. Of course, there are tons of resources, and I tried to put as much as I possibly could on that Padlet for you to be able to look back. The videos you've seen in the presentation are all linked there as well as some other resources that you could print to give you some reminders about some of this stuff. So I think we have 5 minutes left if there are any questions that I can answer or anything that anyone would like to discuss.
I just want to say few minutes I caught, I just saw this email today because ever since school closed, I haven't really been in my email, but I enjoyed it. So I'm gonna look through your slides. It was really thoughtful, well put together and informational, and also that I can use in my classroom. So it was very good.
Thank you for that feedback. I appreciate that. If you think of questions in the coming days or
Stephanie, Amanda had asked, how long do you set aside for practice?
for
Oh,
like readers theater, that
I don't know, Amanda, did you mean the Readers Theater or that first session where she practiced with the kids? Yep, Readers Theater.
okay. I mean, it really just depends, and different kids need different amounts of practice too. But the Little Red Riding Hood experience, we kind of did that over the course of 1 week. And so, a practice session, like if they were practicing with their cast, maybe like 10 minutes because the scripts weren't super long or anything like that. And then I could pull students who might need more help. And I actually developed those scripts based on our CKLA unit and kind of had the parts leveled to some degree to match the needs of the students. So everybody was able to be successful. Later in the year, I did a script for the 101st day of school where every student part in the same readers theater, and they absolutely loved it. They wanted to turn everything into a readers theater after Little Red Riding Hood. But we invited the parents, and I think 2 or 3 classes at the school ended up coming to watch their 101 Dalmatians. So it was a lot of fun.
so when you said something about not making them too dependent,
Hmm.
how do you prevent that, and what is too much that makes a child or anybody that teaching how to read and be fluent in reading not being so dependent on the teacher?
I think that, and this was a big shift for me when I did go through my linguistic phonics training. I think I had been one of those teachers that wanted, I didn't want kids to feel like they were struggling. So I would do a lot of pre-teaching before they had the opportunity to struggle. So I think what I've done is they know they're going to try, and this goes for reading and writing, but they know I'm going to show them after they've tried, so it takes a little bit, especially at the beginning of the year, especially with writing, to get them comfortable putting down what they think. But I think, we do a lot of that writing on whiteboards and things so that the corrections are, um, not as difficult for them to make. And I think the more I tell them, if you're not making mistakes, I'm really not doing my job because you already knew all of that. So my job is to teach you more. So I think just kind of making that the culture of my classroom. But for reading, the main thing is having them read first. I don't read it for them first. I don't do a echo reading as far as me reading it before they've had a chance to read it on their own first.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
If anyone else has more questions or would ever like to reach out to me for any reason, feel free to use that email. 'Cause I love to learn from everybody else also. So I really appreciate you spending time with me today. And I hope you enjoy the rest of our sessions.